It was Halloween, full moons, blue moons, election day, the end of humanity as we know it. It's the week of 1 November 2020, and this is the Security Weekly News. On the news, election day jitters, 0 days in Microsoft, Maze, Kimsuky, and it's Jersey, baby, in Montana, so stick around.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week, your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. Increased attacks, skill gaps, talent shortages, expanding attack surfaces. Cybersecurity and IT teams face these real issues every day. CyberA for Teams is the #1 NIST-aligned DoD 8140 and 8570 compliance certification and skills training platform. CyberA for Teams makes managing teams easier, guarantees measurable training outcomes, and keeps your team's skills sharp to meet today's biggest security threats. And did you know 96% of the Fortune 500 have employees training on CyberA? CyberA for Teams. Now you know. Visit cybera.it/solved to solve your team training challenges.
Welcome to the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White, and it's Election Day in the United States with the 4-year presidential election on the line. That's right. Both sides have basically said that the world will stop turning if their side doesn't win, and third-party candidate Doug White announced that something, dark side, something, but don't let that fool you, before wandering back into the Security Weekly open bar. The big concerns of the day, though, are mostly about misinformation or that some sort of cyber attack might occur today. I have never had that big of a concern about votes being rigged and all this, and any kind of significant effect on voting machinery. Because really, I've been voting since I was 18 years old, and most of the voting machine hacks, and I've gone and seen the voting machine hacks, and you've seen the voting machine hacks, and we've seen the YouTubes, and we've been to DEF CON and seen the voting village and all that stuff. And yeah, a lot of this stuff is old, it's antiquated, it's probably poorly patched and whatever, but it's real localized. And, every state has different methods, they have different machines, they have different protocols, I don't know, but who knows? Maybe there's something out there. The big concerns, though, seem to be around misinformation and localized attacks. A recent study cited in this article said that the average municipal computer has more than 30 vulnerabilities and risk conditions that in an average local government the attacker has over 15 ways to penetrate a typical computer and reach an intended target. Okay. But again, all these systems are separate from each other, and they're usually separated from, I don't know about everywhere, but at least here they're separate from the internet, they're separate from the municipal system. So a widespread attack on them doesn't seem like it would be very easy to put together. Again, it seems misinformation comes to the front with a lack of access to polling times, or just straight up misinformation about where to vote, or straight up misinformation about you name it. We're all familiar with that. Counties being ransomware was listed by Mike Hamilton, the CISO of CI Security, which could affect the ability to count and report votes. So this was a much greater concern. I'm sure a lot of us will be contacted by the press today and tomorrow to comment on these things. So, think about that before they call, so you'll have something to say. I know I will. Outside of misinformation, the biggest threats leading up to the election were scams targeting voters with enticing emails to get them straight to ransomware sites, straight up swindles, and all the other usual stuff that you have come to know and love about the interweb. The Wisconsin Republican Party was hit for over $2.3 million as scammers spoofed invoices from fake MAGA hat vendors. So people really want those MAGA hats, and they thought they probably had a lot more than they thought, but they were spoofed. And so with everyone already panicking that the election means the end of the world as we know it, it's a pretty target-rich environment, and probably will be for a while. I really would encourage you to go out and talk to your people in your enterprise about being really, really vigilant about this, because no matter what happens in the election, there's going to be a lot of targeting opportunities for phishing attacks as a result of the election. I mean, if we just, put out, here's a video of Barack Obama and Saddam Hussein and Adolf Hitler living it up somewhere in Argentina, a lot of people would click that. I mean, just, a lot of people would click it. A lot of people would click on that Joe Biden nudes headline too, but I really advise you not to click on that. Take it from someone who knows. Now, on the same note, a robocaller, let's call it a creepy robocaller, more creepy than the usual robocaller, has sent more than 10 million calls in the United States warning voters to stay home. It's kind of one of those, creepy messages. So it sounds like a prank. It's really been particularly active in the last couple of days in battleground states. The call is basically a computerized voice that says it is a test call repeatedly and then warns people to stay inside. It doesn't seem that it says anything in particular about the election, but they did hit Michigan last night with this. It doesn't say don't go vote. It just says stay inside, test call, so kind of creepy, weird thing. The U.S. president is not elected by popular vote counts, but rather by a system called the Electoral College, if you're not in the U.S. or reading the news. And, of course, the Electoral College is praised or hated depending on which candidate and which party wins and loses in which year. So all that can add up to things like this being used to try to influence the election. So I think there's a lot more concern about misinformation and about misleading things than there is about somebody actually compromising a voting machine, even though that gets a lot bigger headline than misinformation because it's a lot flashier. And, seeing some 10-year-old break into a voting machine in like 30 seconds is pretty impressive. So, Google's Project Zero announced that a Windows 0 day was being actively exploited and no patch is in sight for at least 2 weeks. Project Zero, which is Google's operation for that, gave Microsoft a 7-day deadline this time. They usually give them a lot more time to fix flaws, but they said since it was being actively exploited already in the wild, so they normally don't disclose things they find for 90 days, and they give Microsoft like a big window to fix it before they disclose it. But this time they said it was already being exploited. They want to let people know. It's CVE 2020 117087. Wow, there's a lot of those this year. It's a buffer overflow in the Windows kernel crypto driver, which is called cng.sys. Basically what it does is it creates a way to privilege escalate locally on a machine. So it could it's more almost an insider threat kind of thing, but there's so many remote code executions now. This might be something somebody could execute remotely, but it's definitely an insider threat type issue. It does involve 16-bit integer truncation, FF hex, we love you so. I did put some other information up. There's quite a few links in that article about it. You can go to the CVE and read about it. There's a lot of different articles about this out this week. So if you want to read the actual source code for this or how to do it or whatever, you can certainly do that. It can use for a sandbox escape was the primary demonstration of this. So breaking out of virtual machines on Windows 10 machines. So this was where this really resides, which means a lot of people are subject to it. In another series of high-profile hacker sentences, Aleksandr Brovko, who is maybe Russian, maybe from Czech Republic. I don't know if he changed citizenship or what, but he pled guilty back in February and was sentenced this week to 8 years in jail. Brovko was basically a meta-hacker, I call it meta-hacker, who was working with a team to monetize botnet data for over a decade. So the report, the Department of Justice indictment and so forth said that for over 10 years they had been doing this. They had a botnet, or they were mining a botnet that was focused on American personal and financial information, and according to court documents caused more than, I don't know how they calculate this. I've seen tons of these kind of court documents. I worked in these cases. But apparently, according to court document, they caused more than $100 million in intended loss. So this was the amount attached to this. Brovko was responsible for primarily parsing botnet logs to find monetizable information. He also was the person who did all the verification of accounts to make sure they were legit, that you could actually get into them. And he evaluated the amounts in the accounts to see if they were worth the time, which is probably why mine was left alone, and so on. A kind of interesting story about Maze ransomware was released today that I truly enjoyed. I really had a good time reading this story. Apparently, the Maze Group issued a press release on the 1st of November saying that Maze was officially closed. And the announcement was published on Twitter yesterday by Malware Hunter Team. And the statement denied that there was ever a Maze cartel. And accused journalists of inventing the Maze cartel. So it said, we're not a cartel. We're just, some, innocent people that are trying our best. Now, this was in contrast to Mandiant's report that Maze was operated via a profit-sharing arrangement amongst criminal groups. I kind of tended to believe Mandiant a bit more than some random tweets claiming, and this thing is just great to read. So you should definitely read the story. But they went on, they claimed they were not in it for the money. So this was not about money ever. They were just trying to help out with national security. I mean, this was the claim from the Maze Group, was that, we're not doing this for, monetary gain. No way. But, we're heroes here. I mean, heroes of the people, that kind of thing. They're like the Maze Group is standing on the rooftop in Gotham City, gazing out into the rain, with their head hung down, thinking about how horrible it is to be a superhero and all the angst that goes along with not having, that kind of thing. But they did go ahead and warn about how poor security is and how that poor security is a real threat, and that some, quote, radical psychos may get involved if they hadn't helped to reveal the flaws. And cash in. I mean, there was that whole thing. The whole thing started to sound like some kind of QAnon post about them with some super wealthy families controlling the global economy. We've heard that before. Destruction of traditional currency. All will be lost. Yada, yada, yada. You will be tagged with chips and your DNA will be collected to make a mutant race of bizarre fly hybrid chimera supermen. And I don't know, something about... a girl with a bow and arrow. I don't know. It got weird at that point. At the end of the post, Maze says, "We will be back to you when the world will be transformed. We will," I'm quoting this, "we will return to show you again the errors and mistakes and to get you out of the maze." I mean, there's a Marvel movie series coming from this called, Maze versus Ultron or something like that. Anyway, Maze was famous for being the first double extortion product, which was quite inventive and was the one that allowed for, they take your unencrypted files first and then they encrypt them. So that way they can threaten to release the data to encourage payment of the ransom, but only for good. Yeah, exactly. And I know I do a lot of stories about patching, and you probably get tired of hearing it, but here's another one. Over a year and a half after patch for CVE 2020-0796 was first found, Jan Kapriva at Aleph Computer Security Incident Response Team and SANS ISC used Shodan searches to show that over 100,000 Windows systems are still vulnerable to the SMBGhost attack. Data was gathered over 8 months showing that patching did intensify back in August, but there were still many virtual vulnerable machines, like over 100,000. SMBGhost is a Windows 10 vulnerability, which is wormable, a word I really hate, but I don't know a better one. And this is an SMB 3.1.1 problem, and it allows essentially a custom rolled packet to result in remote code execution. So, patch, come on. More threats from Kimsuky. I don't know who named that one. But Kimsuky is an APT from North Korea, if you didn't know them. DHS issued a warning that the group has been actively targeting U.S. organizations and has started using new tools to conduct operations. The new toolkit they're using is called KGH_spy, which is a modular framework which can do all sorts of digital James Bond kind of things, R.I.P. Sean Connery. But they're used for spying on users' machines and collecting information. The toolkit's already has modules for command execution, data collection, backdoor access, etc., all sorts of spy tools in use. According to the story, antivirus signatures are not yet available to detect this toolkit, and the group is also using another tool called C-Spy, which is a tool that determines if additional malware can be downloaded without any sort of detection. And when we come back, Jason Woods is going to join us, so stick around.
Do you know where your organization's crown jewel data is, whose data it is, what it contains, and if it's flagged, tagged, and classified accurately? Defense in Depth requires discovery in depth. At Big ID, they help organizations uncover dark data, classify sensitive and regulated data, meet compliance requirements, and take action for data on-prem, in the cloud, and everywhere in between. Learn more about how Discovery in Depth can change the way enterprise organizations find, classify, and protect sensitive data at securityweekly.com/BigID.
Back from a long holiday where he staged the first production of the hit musical Oklahoma in Klingon with an all-Klingon identifying cast is our hero, Jason Woods. I was particularly taken with the new song Habsolil Hwach, which roughly translates as "Your mother has a smooth forehead." Welcome back, Jason.
Hey, Doug, how are you?
I'm pretty good.
I managed to hold it in until you finished. I was coming close to losing it, though.
Well, you know, my Klingon dialect is really bad these days, so that's...
Yeah, you did miss out. You probably should, yeah.
I don't have nearly enough phlegm to actually speak Klingon correctly, so you gotta...
Well, there's always the future.
One can always hope.
Exactly. So Doug actually stole one of the stories I wanted to talk about, which was the Maze deal, and I decided to leave it for him this time and not try and take it away. Because I just laughed at it, and it was like, yeah, sure, you're retired, and it wasn't about the money. Good.
No way,
We'll see
man.
We'll see your next iteration. But honestly, I mean, this is one of the things I kind of enjoy about our field. It's one of the things I enjoy about my job, because I get to see, really in detail how a lot of these threat actors are operating, what they're doing on the systems. And some insights into different things that they use to get people to respond to their to the bait that they're tossing out there, trying to get people to click on. And I found two articles that I actually put in here. One was from the SANS Internet Storm Center, and the other one was from the Zscaler blog, basically talking about malware and how they operate, and it has some really good information in it. And it was interesting to me, again, because this is the type of work I do, is analyzing this type of stuff and writing up about it for publication. So that's, seeing this was just like, hey, this is just, more malware porn, if you want to call it that. The Zscaler blog post starts out, or covers rather, how APT31, or Judgment Panda, if depending on which terms you prefer, uses legitimate services and that a large number of businesses depend on for their infrastructure to operate on. And they also included some really good screenshots of the phishing lures, the documents and stuff like that the operators are using to get people to bite. The SANS blog post gets a little bit more into some of the details, particularly around network communications, as well as changes to registry and things like that. Both of them actually cover that. There's a couple of things that I think are useful for this, though. One right away is both blog posts include some screenshots of the documents, the malicious documents that were created by the actors intending to lure people in, and they look pretty good. The Zscaler blog post includes documents that are pretending to be health organizations, or government agencies from various countries, talking about COVID vaccines and things like that. The SANS blog post it had a little bit more a neighborhood kind of a feel to it, but for something going on there. But you can use both of those these blog posts with these images as kind of, hey, here is some awareness. Now, a lot of our user awareness training says, hey, don't click on links that from people we don't know, or open up documents that look suspicious, and they leave it really kind of vague and fuzzy, and nobody knows really what that's about. And I like these because it tells us or gives us something visual to reference. And, visual is better, I think, for getting people's attention. Now, you're always going to have folks who are going to click anyhow, but at least that gets things a little bit more interesting to our user base, and hopefully it gets them to be more wary of what they're seeing. One of the things that the Zscaler blog post talked about too is the actors are very interested in or are very focused on what is interesting to us, whether that is elections, whether that's COVID-related news or about vaccines or trends in our area, or even just neighborhood trick-or-treating plans. It's things that people are willing to open up, and they're pushing on those buttons. The next thing you can do, though, is use both of these blog posts. They've got some great technical content for us as the security professionals. Zscaler points out that APT31 likes to use legitimate services like Dropbox and GitHub to do command and control and to host payloads. And, this is really difficult, can be really difficult for organizations to deal with. They're not going to block GitHub. They may or may not block Dropbox, depending on what they use inside of their organization, because that they can't block it because that'll break different things occurring inside of their business. And quite honestly, I have seen examples of intrusions where, somebody is seeing malware coming from one of these services, and so they do something like, well, we'll just block Dropbox entirely, and the actor moves over to use something like AWS or Box or what have you. They just switch platforms, and it's really easy for them. So, you really need to focus on our defenses that are looking for behaviors that help us spot when something unusual is occurring, something is suspicious. Things like a Word document, pulling down an exe. I don't really care from where, but why is it doing that? And it's being used from the download command comes out of PowerShell, and then a registry change is made to create a COM application. Why is that happening? And then watching for C2 communications. These are different things that you can see happening, registry changes that are unusual, run keys, services being modified, things like that. And then the last thing I want to point out is a lot of this malware, we think, oh my goodness, I got hit with Emotet. What do I need to do? Well, a lot of these malware applications don't work on their own. The SANS blog post gets into basically a walkthrough of Brad Duncan, the author, executing the Emotet malware in his lab environment and watching Emotet connect out to its C2, pull down Quackbot, which then communicated to its C2, which then pulled down another version of Emotet to go do something else. Why did they do all this? I'm not entirely sure. But that was the way the malware author decided to, or the campaign author decided to structure this and use bits and pieces. If you want to check it out, Brad's got some great information in there. It's definitely a lot of network information. If you're interested in PCAPs and what that looks like, you can go take a look at that. And again, look for those registry changes and things like that that's in there. And just see how this would do. Would you be able to see that? And how would your organization stand up to it? All of these posts, I think, are really interesting to read. You should check it out. Share the information that would be interesting to our coworkers, things like what the phishing messages look like, and then do some hunting on your own. Can you find this stuff inside of your own business or organization? And then, if so, if you're hunting it, how can you find that more rapidly and work better to contain and clear and get that stuff out of your organization? Definitely worth the read. Go ahead and check it out.
All right. I know that I like to read about Emotet and all these other frameworks, but they're getting very sophisticated now. I mean, sometimes they're not. Like that one sounds more like maybe they didn't use the system development life cycle when they put their malware framework together. But those books are out there, guys, so you could pick them up. But definitely worth reading. All that stuff is nice to keep up with. Thanks, Jason. Apparently, former New Jersey Governor Christie got fooled into making a 50-second Cameo video encouraging fellow former New Jersey resident Greg Gianforte, I got to say that right. You don't want to mispronounce those names, who is running for governor of Montana. Okay, so just try to keep up. All right, so Gianforte's running for the governor of Montana. Christie was fooled into making a Cameo video telling Gianforte to come home to Jersey. So he did this whole thing about how, we got Springsteen, we got Bon Jovi, we got the Swamps, we got Newark, we got, Fort Lee, all those great places. And Gianforte's a Republican who's taking on Lieutenant Governor Mike Cooney, a Democrat, who I don't think is from New Jersey, but you never know. We're all really from Jersey at heart, right? And in Montana in the governor's race. So the source of the Cameo engagement was a fake name that turned out to be Brad Elkins, who is Cooney's campaign manager. And the whole thing turned into a Twitter war between former Jerseyites, and I would guess, somebody's going to end up chopped up into dog food and buried in the Pine Barrens over this. But, who knows? It's Jersey. So that's the news in the time of plague. I'm Doug White. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Security Weekly News. Vote if you haven't already. Watch out for misinformation, and maybe watch out for people from Jersey on Cameo, or, I don't know, hire Chris Christie to make a happy birthday video for you.